First of all, welcome to day 2 of MIX. Thanks for making it this early. I was going to ask you guys how many of you still haven't been to bed, but kind of decided against it. Before we get started here, and I know some folks are still walking in, but we have a lot to show. So, first I wanted to show you a number, 10 billion. This is the number of online videos that were seen during the month of December in the United States alone. So this number really underscores how video has been a prominent driver of what the web even means these days. So what does it mean to be in front of your computer versus sitting on your couch? Today I'm going to talk to you about how to integrate media in your Silverlight application. So my name is Ed Maya. I'm a program manager in the Silverlight team. And the features for media in Silverlight basically can be split up into 4 categories. First one is integrated. So Silverlight is basically just another player inside of the Windows Media ecosystem. If you have existing servers, if you have existing encoders, Silverlight will basically plug into that very nicely. Also, the content you serve to Silverlight, if you want to serve that to, say, a Windows mobile device or maybe an IPTV box, that also works very nicely together. Second thing is rich. So in Silverlight, we don't think of media as kind of this rectangular window that's just sitting off on its own on your website. In Silverlight, video is a first-class citizen, so whatever you can do with other visual elements, you can also do with video. And I'm going to show you that in my demo too. Next thing is flexible. So with Silverlight Video, we understand that for you to fully unleash your creativity and create the branded experiences that you want, you need to be flexible. Basically, you can deliver your video in multiple ways. So whether you put it on a Windows Media Server and you stream it to the client, or whether you just put it on a regular web server and progressively download it to your users. You have a lot of flexibility with Silverlight Media as well. And finally, monetized. So we understand a lot of you have businesses to run, and we do have a set of features that allow you to both make money as well as save money. So these kind of 4 categories are also going to split up the agenda for the next hour. So first I'm going to show you a demo that showcases more of the rich and flexible features in Silverlight Media. Then we're going to look at more of the integrated and monetized features. And at the end, I'm going to talk a little bit about content protection in Silverlight. So we're happy to announce DRM in Silverlight 2. And at the end, hopefully, we'll have some time for Q&A. Before we get into the first demo, this is the last thing I swear before we actually start showing some code for you. I wanted to talk a little bit about the architecture of Silverlight. How many of you guys actually went to Joe or Mike's talk yesterday? Quick show of hands. Okay, most of you, but not everyone. So just wanted to give you some context for some of the things we're going to see. Silverlight 1, as hopefully you know by now, shipped in September of last year. It's represented by the orange box there on the projector. Has a lot of great features. First one is a XAML interpreter. So XAML is a markup language used across the Microsoft Developer Designer Continuum. What that means is if you go to the desktop, the .NET framework supports XAML. Expression tools output XAML. And Silverlight, being a part of that ecosystem, also has a XAML interpreter. In Silverlight specifically, XAML is used to represent visual elements and allow you to encapsulate your user controls in a very nice way. So Silverlight 1 does have a XAML interpreter. It also has what we call a UI core. So this is where all of your graphic APIs are, animations, input. And finally, the lower box on the right there, on the lower right, that's most of the features we're going to talk about here. That's where they basically live. So there's a media pipeline inside of Silverlight and a set of encoders. Everything you basically need to take a video file, decode it, render it, and show it to your user. Silverlight 1, one thing it does not have is an internal programming model. So if you want to actually code against some of those Silverlight elements, you actually need to go to your web browser and use your JavaScript engine to be able to program against Silverlight 1. So Silverlight 2, that, as we've been talking about all throughout the day yesterday, Silverlight 2 does two things. First, it replaces the Silverlight 1 package. So it kind of updates the orange box here. And it does that in a fully backwards compatible way. And on top of that, it adds a couple of things. Managed code support. So we do have an internal programming model with Silverlight 2, and also a UI framework. I'm not going to go into the UI framework much at all today. There's a session after this by Karen Corby where she talks about the Silverlight's control model. So if you want to learn more about the UI framework and the built-in controls in Silverlight, that's a good talk for you to go to. The reason this graph is very interesting is because, like I said, most of the features we're going to talk about live inside of the orange box, actually. So what it means is, unless it's something very specific to manage code, and there is one example I'm going to show you later, all of the features we talk about actually can still be accessed using the JavaScript programming model. So if you have your Silverlight 1 app, you can actually require, for example, Silverlight 2, and with making very little changes, you can take advantage of the Silverlight 2 features. So without further ado, I'm going to move into my laptop, hopefully. And what I have here is basically almost a blank Silverlight project. I did kind of prime it for the demo a little bit, so I'll show you what I have. So here you can see basically there's a gray background and a button. You can click on the button and nothing really happens. Nothing's hooked to it. So Silverlight project, like I said, there's XAML. So if you see here, this is what Visual Studio created for me. There's a set of pages. So page.xaml is the root element in the Silverlight visual tree. So whatever you want to display to your user, you would add in here. And right now you can see inside of my page there's a grid, which is a layout container in Silverlight, a stack panel, and a button. So let's get video into this app. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually add an existing item. I'll pick this trailer for Horton Hears a Who, which is actually kind of a cute video. So in order to display this video, so I've actually inserted it into this Visual Studio project. I should actually also mention, Visual Studio creates two projects for you. One is the main Silverlight project. The other one is the web project. When I hit F5, what Visual Studio is actually doing is creating a local web server and kind of simulating you taking this web project, deploying it on your website, except it's just doing it locally. So a good way to think about it is, think of this video as sitting on your website, and now I'm basically coding against the whatever's on that folder. So media element is the object that knows how to render audio and video content in Silverlight. And in order to point it to that video, all you need to do is set the source property as such. So again, with one line of XAML and importing the video, now we'll hopefully be able to see video playback. And this, by the way, is actually a high-definition video that was encoded for this presentation. So once again, you can see a couple of nice features. So I set an opacity on the button on purpose, but you can see the video renders behind without any problems. So kind of the first step of video being a first-class citizen inside of the Silverlight rendering engine. So I'm also going to show this little app I have here. This is just a snippets manager, just so you don't have to suffer through me making mistakes on stage. Kind of like scary movies. It's like, right behind you, whatever. But anyways. So I'm going to paste in a media element that I wrote earlier. So it's really not that different. I'm just setting a width on it and pointing it to that same video. So if I run this, basically now you can see the video has a specified width. So to kind of showcase that the video is truly this first-class citizen, the first thing I'm going to do is not just show the video as soon as it loads. I'm going to create a nice little fade-in animation to give you a taste of the kinds of things you can do. So I'm actually going to come here and paste in a little bit of XAML. So this is taking advantage of the built-in animation system in Silverlight. So Silverlight has this declarative animation engine. So I'm not going to go into much detail here, but basically what it's doing is whenever this media element is loaded, I'm beginning this storyboard. Storyboard is kind of the basic animation object in Silverlight. And I'm animating the opacity property of the media element. So if we run this now, we'll start getting slightly richer experience here. So instead of the video just showing up, you get this nice little fade-in animation. So again, nothing incredibly revolutionary here. But can we take it to the slightly more gratuitous level? So I'm going to paste in a different one. And I don't think us in the Silverlight team can actually do a media demo without video rotating. So I'm basically going to add that in. So now you can see a nice little fade-in animation. Opacity still being animated, except now I'm also rotating and growing my video. I know we've seen this a few times in this conference. So basically, you can see video after this, it basically plays back the same way. This is one step closer to a richer user experience, but let's kind of take it all the way out. So I'm pasting in, this is actually something around 90 lines of XAML, but Silverlight has this great feature called Video Brush. And what I'm doing here is I'm instantiating multiple rectangles. And so a brush in Silverlight, before we get into it, is whenever Silverlight's painting a region, chances are the property of that background is of type brush. And Silverlight has a number of brushes, like a solid color brush or an image brush. And we also have a video brush. So the way you fill a video brush is you set a source name and you point it to the media element object where you want frames to be grabbed from. And once you make this association, Silverlight takes care of making sure that the video frames are always up to date in whatever region you're filling. And you can fill things like video, as you may have seen yesterday in Joe's demo. In my case here, I have 3 rectangles and a bunch of animations. So I actually need to move this guy into the canvas first. But if I run this now, we can see kind of the ultimate gratuitous intro animation for your video. So you can see 3 rectangles animating, each one with its own video. So the video will actually begin. You can see they're always in sync, so Silverlight's taking care of making sure that whatever the media element showing is also shown in these. Let me hit F5 again. Is also shown in these rectangles. And Silverlight kind of takes care of rendering it for you. So basically shows you the flexibility of what you can do with video. And at the end here, you see the video kind of fades in. So again, video, first-class citizen, can't stress it enough. I'm going to go back. And let me add back the first animation, because it's kind of the most subtle. So next thing I'm going to do is actually take this video brush feature and use it for something a little less gratuitous. So something that a lot of people have been doing on the web especially is a lot of reflections. So I'm going to add in basically something very simple, which is a rectangle. And it's set to be the same height and width as the media element. I have a video brush in its fill. And I'm doing basically a transformation to make it look like a reflection. So basically inverting it and translating it a little bit. I'm also applying an opacity mask to kind of give the reflection look. And I'm also setting an animation that matches the media elements animation so that the reflection doesn't show up before the actual video does. So just to give you a little taste of something a little better looking that you can actually build with the video brush feature. So in this case, you see nice little fade-in animation. And after that, you get a video with reflection, basically using, 50 lines of XAML, so not much code at all. So can we add interactivity to this, though? And that's what I'm going to do next. So we have this nice little button sitting on top of it. Can we hook it to the media element and make it do something meaningful? So to do that, I'm going to actually go to the code behind. So I gave a name to my button. It's called my button. So in the code behind it, whenever this page is created, I'm going to listen for the click event on the button. And inside of that event handler, I have a little code I'm going to paste in. So this is doing something pretty trivial. It's going up to the media element and checking its current state. So current state tells you what the media element is doing at that point. So this is where you would find out things like, is the media element currently opening a file? Maybe it's buffering. In this case, I'm actually checking whether the media element's playing. And if it is, then I'm going to call the pause method on that media element. So we're kind of seeing, we're creating a very basic transport control. And you can fully customize it so you get all the flexibility of getting this lookless video player that is the media element. So if it's playing, then I'm going to call pause. Otherwise, I'm going to call the play method. And I'm also changing the content of the button to kind of describe what the next action would be. If we run this, again, same video brush. That's kind of another nice thing about having XAML versus the code is the functionality is completely separate from the look of your application, or largely separate, I should say. So in this case, you have a nice little video. You can play pause. So again, 10 lines of code and 15 lines of XAML. You get this functionality. So nothing mind-blowing, but at this point, we're still kind of tied into the browser, Chrome. So can we get an experience that's a little more immersive and more resemblant of what you would get when you're sitting on your couch kind of watching your TV? So Silverlight has a great feature called full screen mode. And what I'm going to do here is whenever the user clicks the video, I'm going to switch into full screen mode. So to do that, I'm going to go to my media element, which I named it my media element. And every visual element in Silverlight has essentially mouse events. So I'm going to listen for the mouse button up, and Visual Studio creates a nice little event handler for me. And I'm going to do a couple of things. First is I'm going to get the Silverlight host. So think of this of the Silverlight host as your application's running in the web browser, and there's an instance of Silverlight that's actually running your app. So by getting the host, you're actually getting that instance. And the host is where you go to for things like full screen mode. So it has a content property, and the content property has this is full screen property that you can actually go and set. So if I set it to true now, and by the way, this can only be done in response to user input for security reasons. But in this case, I'm listening for the mouse left button up event, so it should be good. So video loads. Play pause works the same way. And now if I click the video, you see I kind of get a different view. So we've gone outside of the browser, and as an app developer or a designer, you kind of get the whole screen region to paint with. Also notice that Silverlight does not kind of auto-scale anything. So you really get the full flexibility of being able to render on the full screen. So let's say maybe this is actually the app you wanted to write, and you want to kind of keep the reflection in the button on there. But let's say that we want it for a second to just show the video and nothing else. So to do that, I'm actually going to listen. I'm going to come back here to my code, and on the host.content, there's also a full screen changed event. So I'm going to listen to that. So this event basically is raised whenever Silverlight either enters full screen mode or exits full screen mode, because obviously the user can always press escape to exit full screen mode. So let me paste in the code that I'm going to talk about. So I'm actually getting another pointer to the host, and I'm checking if the host is currently in full screen mode. Then what I'm going to do is go to my media element and set the width and height of it to kind of take on the available screen space. And I'm also hiding my button because we don't want the button on there. And otherwise, I'm basically taking my media element back to the original size in my web page. So you have to do, so the question was, is there a way to add bands on if the video doesn't take on the whole screen? The answer is you have to do it yourself. So you can easily just introduce a rectangle behind the media element and do that. Yes. Or you can set the background. There's many ways of doing it. Typically, you'll set just the background of a grid or something. So you can basically see video goes into this nice full screen mode. So full screen mode, rich and flexible. Last thing before I kind of beat this horse to death, I wanted to show a new feature in Silverlight 2 that's related to managed code, and I think it's a really exciting feature. And that is the set source APIs that takes a stream. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually drag in a new button here. So this button, I called it an open local file button, and it says on it, open local file. So let me actually add a little stack panel here where I'm going to put these two buttons in. So the code to actually get this done, I'm going to go back to my code behind and listen again for the click event on this button. Oops. And this is what the code looks like for it. So Silverlight has something called an open file dialog, which is basically one way to get a managed stream object that represents a video file. So the open file dialog is basically a way for the user to get data from their local hard drive and give it to you as an app developer on the client. And once you have that data, you can basically choose to upload it to the server, or in this case, what I'm actually doing is, so there's a selected file, and I'm doing an open read call that returns the stream, and I'm setting that right into my media element. So using this set source method. So that's basically a way that you can have your users open, say, one of their home videos and see them instantly on your website without having to round trip back to the server. So this actually moved because I introduced this stack panel, but you can still see the video. Play pause still works. You can go into full screen mode, except now you can click this open file button, and I'm actually going to pick a jumper video. So keep in mind, I totally stepped out of the sandbox, picked a video file, gave it to the app developer. Now you can play back in Silverlight with taking full advantage of the rich and flexible user experience without having to round trip to the server. Nice, I love that part. And obviously, this same video can go into full screen mode. So once you reset the source, you kind of can do the same things that you could with the original video file. So I showed you basically a set of features and tools that you can use to build your apps. But I also wanted to show you a full app that kind of that was built strictly using managed code and some of our user controls and the media features that we talked about. So in this case, the first thing you can actually see is there's a nice little video player app that looks like a little bit like a window. You can have a play pause button. You can actually seek around in it. Full screen mode actually works. And you can see here that I actually introduced a black rectangle behind the video to make sure that the video is the only thing that the user can see. And I also have here a little video panel user control. And what this does is it actually goes to videos.msn.com and downloads a set of videos. Oh, nice. So the dramatic L'Amour, or I should say the infamous dramatic L'Amour, because after yesterday. So this kind of gives you an idea. Yeah, nice. If you haven't seen this, this is a great video. Mike, are you kind of sick of it? Never. So you can see, you can drag your videos and things kind of render on top of each other. Let me seek back and let that guy play. Oops. Your other videos can play on top of each other without any problems. Seek this guy. So you can see here 3 videos at once. This video at the bottom here is actually being progressively downloaded. the videos from msn.com are actually being streamed. So 3 videos, different delivery methods, all at once, kind of ultimate reach and flexibility that you can get with Silverlight. Oh, and one more thing too, you can take each one of these into full screen mode separately. So back to my presentation. I wanted to talk a little bit about the supported file formats in Silverlight. So what can you play back on the media element object? Video-wise, we support the WMV format, including the VC1 standard. Audio-wise, we support WMA version 7, 8, and 9, and MP3. Silverlight 2, we're actually added a new audio codec, WMA 10 Pro. So a lot of high-definition content is encoded with that. And even if it's encoded with 5.1 audio, Silverlight will downgrade that to audio to stereo and play it back on your end user's machines. How can you deploy your video? There's a couple of ways. The first one is you can use a Windows Media Server. So Windows Server 2008 actually shipped a couple of weeks ago, and you can install Windows Media Services on top of that and get basically on-demand as well as live streaming. So that's kind of the Windows Media ecosystem-friendly way of delivering your video. Another way, obviously, is to just use a regular web server. So whether you're using an IIS server, which can also be installed on Windows Server 2008, for example, or any other web server. If you have, say, an Apache server, and basically all you do is take your media file, put it up there, point the media element to that file, and we'll download it, and as soon as there's enough data, we'll begin playback. So before we get into the next demo, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the IIS 7 media pack features. So IIS is actually, as you may know, Microsoft's web server technology. So it's shipped with Vista, it's shipped with Windows Server 2008. And IIS is not only something that ships in the box, but it's also a platform. So you can kind of create your own extensions to it in your own modules. Microsoft also creates additional modules that ship on top of IIS. And the media pack are basically very interesting media-related improvements that you can make to your IIS server. So the first one I wanted to talk about is bitrate throttling. The motivation for bitrate throttling is the fact that the average user will actually only watch 20% of a file, according to some studies that they've made. I'm not sure if I trust the 20% number, but you basically know that a lot of users will not watch the entire file. And in the regular web server scenario, what happens is the server is just sending down data as fast as it can, and you get this kind of graph on the left where you have this kind of red bandwidth that you sent down to the user, but it was just never watched. So with bitrate throttling, when you install that add-on on your IIS server, you basically you're able to control how much media is sent down to the client and also at what speeds. So the way it works is you put a media file up on your server, and IIS detects when it's serving out the file that this is a media file. It also opens the media file and sees what's the encoded bit rate of that media file. And if your end user is just playing it back, then that's going to be the same bandwidth that the user is consuming the video at. So IIS basically only sends the video down at that bit rate. So you get a graph more like the one on the right there, where you're still wasting a little bit of bandwidth because you always want to be ahead of the user, but you're kind of not wasting nearly as much bandwidth. So that gives you two things. Obviously, you save money because you're not sending down data to the client that they don't need. But you also, because you're sending data at a slower rate, you also kind of increase your scalability factor by a little bit. The next feature I want to talk about is web playlists. So this is another add-on that you can actually download from. There's a CTP out on the web right now if you have IIS 7 installed. And what it basically is a way for you to create a playlist. So whether you're doing kind of adding a video ad ahead of the main content, or whether you're just showing your user a sequence of related videos, the way it works is you send the client a client-side playlist. So think of it as an XML representation of the entries that you're going to play back. The difference is it's not, there's also some server-side state. So it's not just a plain client-side playlist. And what happens is the server keeps track of things like if the user tries to request entry 5 before requesting entry 4, then you kind of know that, the playlist has been tampered with. And on the server side, you're able to kind of deny that request. So the main goal of a playlist is to make sure that, that your client cannot alter the state. The main reason is the state's kept on the server. So having said that, I'm actually going to demo both first web playlists, but I'm also later going to demo bitrate throttling working with a server box I have here on stage. So let me pull up my project. So first I'm going to run this to kind of give you a feel for where we are, where we're starting off. So I actually have, right now I'm just playing a local file, but I have the same video player user control that I showed in the RSS video feed. So again, you can seek pause the same way. And here I also have a little image add control that I added. And I'll show you a little bit about that when we get to the code. But right now it's just showing a random, think of it as a random untargeted ad, something that doesn't really, is not really relevant to this user. So if I show you what I have here, there's this video player user control. And I'm not going to go into it in very much detail, but it has basically a source property that you can set. And it also had this ad service. So what it's doing here is it's loading this image ad viewer object, which is kind of the ad where we saw the ad before. This image ad viewer, again, very simple user control. And all it's doing, all it exposes publicly is a constructor and this load ad method. The load ad method takes a URI, and what this control does is go gets this image and displays it in a nice, meaningful way. So think of it as this image ad viewer is, it could be, if you have an ad service, it could be the thing you write to kind of go fetch your video ads and display them nicely to the user. On the video player side, all we basically do is we instantiate this image ad viewer, and whenever this media opened event is raised on the media element, which basically indicates I just successfully opened a media file, then the media elements, the video player is actually going to go to the ad viewer and say load ad and pass in a URL. So this URL is actually going back to the server that I have here on stage, and think of this as my own publishing point. So a very basic ad service. So what it does is, if you don't pass it any data, it kind of gives you that random ad. So in this case, I'm just saying get ad.png. It shows you the random untargeted ad. But as you append more information on the query string, you're able to get a more and more refined ad for you. Another thing to mention is on the server side, what I'm actually doing, and this is the demo, the server is actually forwarding to another file that's sitting on the same server, but nothing's precluding you from just forwarding to, say, DoubleClick or whatever ad service you may choose to use. So let's actually talk about the web playlists, though. So the first thing I'm going to do is in my main XAML, where I'm instantiating my video player objects. So right now, if you see, I'm playing back this local file, or the file that's sitting on the same server as the application is hosted. But I'm going to actually switch it to this other web playlist file. So this is something I created before, and I'll show you what it is. So first let me show you the text representation of this playlist. So what I'm actually showing here is something I just got live from the server box. And you can see a couple of things. One, this is an ASX file. So ASX files are the way in the Windows Media ecosystem to play back a playlist on your client. So they're basically what we call client-side playlists. You can do things like set metadata on your playlist. so things like a title or abstract or copyright information. In Silverlight 2, we actually added support for param tags, which is something we didn't have in Silverlight 1, and a lot of customers were actually using it. But what param tags allow you to do is take any custom metadata and send it down to the client inside of your playlist file. So in this case, I have the session ID, which is sort of a state that's kept on the server, and I'm passing that as metadata to my Silverlight client. Then there's the two entries. I want to show a couple of things about these. First of all, the first entry has this attribute, client skip equals no. What that basically tells the media element, so the media element is going to open this playlist and interpret each of the attributes. This tells the media element that the end user should not be able to seek or skip past this entry. And when the media element sees this, it actually enforces that. So there's no way as a developer for you on the client to override this client skip equals no attribute. So you get a little bit of enforcing both on the server as well as on the client. The URLs that web playlists give us, in this case, you can see they're quite obfuscated. And the media element doesn't really care. It's going to open the file, and it knows the URL for the first entry, and it's just going to make a request for that. But this is the part where basically the IIS server is keeping track of the state. So it gives you an obfuscated URL, which also prevents an end user from ever getting a permanent link to your media files. And also allows the server to kind of redirect to a personalized ad, for example. One last thing to see in this URLs is that there's a session ID here. And this session ID matches the same metadata that I'm exposing here. And what it allows the server to do is to keep a persistent notion of who a client is. And in doing that, basically they can keep track of history and do a lot of interesting things like give you a personalized video ad or something that's a lot more relevant to maybe your geographic location. So really the possibilities are endless, and you can create your own modules for the server, but it does keep a session ID on the URLs. So let's actually point the media element to that web playlist and take a look at what we get. So this specific playlist that I'm going to show, what it does is it has a video trailer preceded by a video ad. So this is a Halo 3 ad. And you can see, as an end user, if I try to seek around, it doesn't work. I'm actually clicking, I swear to God. But the user can still pause the video, but seeking is not allowed because on the server side, we set the client skip equals no property. And you can see here, I still have my random untargeted ad. And we're going to deal with that in a little bit. So as soon as the ad ends, the media element will basically preload the next entry and kind of jump right into the video. So the user gets this nice, seamless experience.
I don't want to marry you, Joy, but I'm leaving you. Well, I mean,
so in this case, obviously, you're playing back the video. You're able to seek around.
Just got dumped.
Jack, you're fired.
So
You're like a son to me.
the one SOAR on the screen right now is actually this red, random, untargeted ad. Can we actually do better? And what I wanted to do is basically take advantage of the session ID. So as we said, on the server side, they have this notion of this user corresponds to this session. So let's actually send that data to the server when we make the ad request. And on the server side, it's actually able to give you a more relevant ad to what you're seeing. So as we saw here in the ISX file, so this is the file format for web playlists, we included the session ID as metadata. And we can actually fish that out on the media element object. So let me paste in a little bit of code. So in this case, whenever the media element opens a playlist file, all of the metadata entries associated with the video entry that we're playing back are stored in this attributes collection. So what I'm basically doing here is, does the attributes collection contain this key session ID? And if it does, I'm basically going to make a request for a very similar URL where the base is the same, but I'm appending a query string called session ID and passing in the actual value that's on the server. And what I'm going to do is, in case that attribute is not present, I'm still just going to make a request for a random ad. So if I run this now, we'll see we open the playlist, we find the session ID, send that to the server, and the video ad we get is actually a better ad. So let's say this could be an Xbox.com video or ad related more to the video ad that you're watching. Can we still do better? And the answer is yes. So we've now given an ad that's more relevant to what the user's playlist file is, or kind of their history. But can we give an ad that's specific to the point in the video file that the user is watching? And that basically gets us to the markers feature in Silverlight, media markers. So to show you that, I'm going to pull up Expression Encoder. Expression Encoder is the latest encoder product that Microsoft has been working on. I'm not going to go, it has a lot of great features, but I'm not going to have time to go into it in much detail now. But there is a great session tomorrow morning solely on Expression Encoder and the new features in Encoder 2. So if you're interested in that, I strongly encourage you to attend. Let me import a video file here. So I'm actually opening the same video file that we were just seeing the trailer for. So it has a nice little timeline you can seek around. And in this video specifically,
where can you go? You can forget all your
these people kind of are in a hard time. Let's go to Vegas. So right around second 30 is the first time Vegas is shown in this ad. So I'm going to basically associate metadata with that point. So Encoder has ways of associating metadata. There's a lot of things like metadata with the video file itself, but it also has something called script commands. Script commands, once again, speaking to the integrated part of Silverlight Media, is something that's fully existent and prominent in the Windows Media ecosystem today. So there's a set of tools that already generate script commands, and Windows Media Player and other players are able to fish out that data and do meaningful things with it. So I'm going to actually add a new script command here. When you add a script command, there's three things you need to specify. First is a time. So in this case, because I already selected 30 seconds, it auto-filled the time for me. The other two properties are think of it as two custom strings that you can specify on the encoder side. And as long as your client looks for that piece of data, then basically you have all you need. So what I'm going to do here is set a keyword called add keywords. And as far as the command goes, I'm going to associate the string Las Vegas with that point in the file. So this is the point where I could basically hit encode, and the expression encoder would take this piece of metadata and burn it into the file. So it's actually stored inside of the WMV file itself. I'm not going to actually do it here, but I already have another publishing point on the server that points to a file that has that same marker we just added. So let me comment this guy and add this back. Oh, actually, I still haven't listened for anything. So on the client side, how do we actually fish out that data, right? So the media element has this event called, so let me go to my media element. The event's called marker reached. So whenever during playback, the media element runs into one of those script commands, this is the event that's basically raised. And inside of here, let me paste in my code. I'm doing a couple of things. You actually get a link to the marker object that gave rise to this event. And this is represented inside of the event args. So if you do e.marker, you get things like, essentially think of it as the three columns that you edited in Expression Encoder. So you can check for the type. And right here I'm doing, if the type is add keywords, then I'm going to fish out the keywords from the marker itself and do another load add on my image ad viewer. And I'm going to pass in a couple of things. First, I'm going to pass in my session ID the same way I did before, except now I'm also going to pass in a set of keywords. And hopefully the server will be able to use that to give me a better ad. So if we run this now, In this case, I actually overrode the ad to be able to be seekable, just so we don't have to wait for it. So if you recall, we added metadata around second 30 of the file, so I'm going to seek somewhere around that. So right when the playhead hits second 30, marker reached event is raised, we're going to go back to the server and request a new ad. And now we get basically a great ad. So think of it as Xbox and Microsoft plus Las Vegas, you get an ad for MIX. So basically you can see by adding metadata to your playlist, adding metadata to your media file, you can go from a completely random untargeted ad to a great ad that's relevant to the point in the video file that your user is seeing. So that's a great feature for kind of making money, so you can add video ads, add image ads. But I also want to show you a little bit about the features that help you save money on the server side. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually, I have a little publishing point where, well, I should actually show you this first. If you notice here too, even though this is an IIS-7 server, the specific publishing point that I've been showing is not bitrate throttled. So you can see the download bar filled up extremely quickly. See, it's just going as fast as it can. And obviously, there's very high bandwidth because the server's sitting on stage. But I also have a publishing point where bitrate throttling is enabled. So I want to show you that. I'm going to comment that out. So now this is just a plain media file. So you can see initially your end user gets this burst of content, and that's to make sure that they still get the instant on experience that they expect. But after that, you can see that the download bar and the position bar are moving at the same rate, indicating that the server is sending data to the client at the same bit rate that we're consuming it. Bitrate throttling is great, allows you to save money. There's still a problem though. What if your user actually wants to seek, say, to around here, to somewhere closer to the end of the file? In this case, before, if you were sending data as fast as possible, the user might have to wait a little bit, but potentially not that much. With bitrate throttling, you actually make that scenario really, really bad. So luckily, the Silverlight client actually has a feature that lets you get around that, and that's called byte range seeks. So think of it as, with byte range seeks, you can actually, even when talking to a progressive download server, as long as it supports HTTP 1.1, you can actually go to a non-downloaded portion. The media element starts downloading the right piece of data and starts playback from that point. So to demo that, I'm actually going to clean my cache first, just to make sure I'm not cheating. And if I hit F5, you see the same initial burst. And if I seek to here, you can actually see the media element started downloading from that point and continues from without having to download anywhere in between. And you can actually seek around, and you can see it just works. And even at the beginning, you can see the media element kind of picks up the data that's already there.
Jack, you're fired. Don't get me wrong, you're like a...
So back to the presentation. There we go. So I want to talk a little bit about DRM. We're very excited to add content protection to Silverlight 2. It's going to be actually a flavor of Play Ready. We're going to call it Play Ready for Silverlight. In case you don't know, Play Ready is the next version DRM technology from Microsoft. So think of it as the version following Windows Media DRM, in case you are familiar with that. Much like Windows Media DRM, there's a client-side component. So a clean install of Silverlight 2, even though it has the infrastructure to allow you to play DRM, it doesn't have everything it needs already downloaded. So there's an additional download the user has to go through. And I'm going to show you that. But there's also a server-side component. So in the back end, you need to be able to take clear content and encrypt it. And also, you need to have a way of giving licenses to your users. So we're going to go over two scenarios. First is the online playback scenario in Silverlight, and also the first-time installation. So online playback, normally when you're playing back media, oops, dropped my thing. Normally when you're playing back media, there's two pieces involved. One is a Silverlight client. The other one is the server serving you the media file. In the case of DRM, there's actually a third server, which is your license server. So let's say Silverlight 2, this is actually, for a second, let's assume that they have everything they need. Next, we're going to go over how the user actually gets there. But your Silverlight client makes a request for a media file. At this point, the client doesn't even know that this is a protected media file. And foo.com in this case can be like essentially everything we talked about before can still apply to foo.com. So it could be a regular web server, it could be a streaming point, or even a live stream that the client's requesting. So they make a request for the file. What they get back is a file whose header has a special tag saying, I'm an encrypted file, and this is the location of the license server you need to go to be able to play me back. So the media element opens that file, figures out that this is encrypted, and issues a request to this license server asking for a key. So this is the point where the license server is going to run some business logic. So you have to implement, there's an SDK on the server side, and you have to implement the logic to decide whether to give users a license or not. So at this point, license server could choose to not give a license, and the media element will basically raise a media failed event. Or in this case, let's say the user actually issues a license. So at that point, the media element has what it needs to be able to take that media file, decrypt it, render it, play it back. So very simple. Another thing too to notice is the online portion of the scenario. So Silverlight 2 will not support any offline DRM playback. So what that means is every time the media element runs into protected content, it's going to try to make a live request to the license server. But how does a user actually get to the place where they have what they need to play back DRM content? So we're going to show that real quick. So in this case, there's a Silverlight 2 client. The DRM piece is not installed yet, so think of it as a clean Silverlight 2 build. User makes a request for a media file. They don't even know it's DRM protected. When they get it back, the file has this kind of a marking in the header saying, I'm protected. At that point, the media element will also realize that it doesn't have the DRM piece it needs installed. So what it's going to do is it's going to go to Microsoft.com and ask for an individualized DRM client. The reason we call it individualized is because potentially the actual DLL that you download from Microsoft.com could be specific to your machine. That's basically for robustness reasons. At that point, the Silverlight 2 client has the DRM piece installed, so it has what it needs to play back protected content. So it's going to make a license request to the license server, and once it gets a key, plays it back without a problem. So a quick recap, we saw kind of a lot of things. So first thing, video as a first-class citizen. We looked at full screen mode. We saw video brush. New in Silverlight 2, the set source API that takes a stream object. Once again, stream object, I showed you open file dialog, but you can get the stream from anywhere. You can make an HTTP web request and get a stream, or you can embed an audio file inside of your DLL, and you can get it out and assign it to the media element and play it back. We also looked at client-side playlists. We looked at media markers. Media markers we looked in the context of making an ad request, but you can also use it for a number of things like creating a closed captioning system built on top of Silverlight. You can send viewing data back to the server, or you can begin an animation. So you can really, you get ultimate flexibility. You can do whatever you want with getting that event on the client and that metadata. We also looked at byte range seeks. So it's a feature that currently exists on the streaming server, but we saw it in the context of being able to seek to a non-downloaded portion when talking to a regular web server out there today, as long as the web server supports HTTP 1.1. And we also saw content protection in Silverlight. Also wanted to go over a couple of related talks. So There's Karen's talk today about creating user experiences with Silverlight controls. So she's going to go over basically how you can create reusable, skinnable, and templatable controls. And tomorrow there's a talk on expression encoder too. There were a couple of talks yesterday that might be of interest. Obviously you can't attend them anymore, but they'll be online after the conference. So I would encourage you to, if you didn't go to them, to check them out. So there's one, building rich applications with Silverlight, Joe and Mike's talk, as well as encoding video for Silverlight, and that talks about some of the delivery options. And finally, Silverlight and the advertising opportunity. So with that, I am taking questions. The mic is right up there, so if you guys have any questions, let me know. Can you go up to the mic?
Hi. This is a question related to the DRM server. It has been free so far. Is it going to be a free service, or it's going to be charged? There were rumors that Microsoft is going to charge for the DRM services going forward.
So as far as the license server goes?
Yeah.
So we don't have the business model fully fleshed out yet. So we're still working on that. But you basically look out for updates on future conferences. We don't have that data yet. Yep.
Is Play Ready a new version of DRM, or is it a rebranded DRM?
Play Ready is a new version. It's actually, the big advantage of it is it can be applied to more than just media. So that's kind of the main reason why Silverlight's also using Play Ready. So it's kind of the next, think of it as the next generation, better encryption, better support, and better breach response.
Okay. Thank you.
So.
And can you talk a little bit about how the DRM works on Macs, Linux, and with streaming, and also the downloaded content?
DRM works exactly the same way on the Mac. So every demo I showed here can actually run exactly the same, whether you're using IE, Firefox, or Mac. As far as Linux goes, we are looking at ways to enable DRM at Linux, but there are no concrete plans at this time. The what? And Novell is building it. Good point. So Microsoft does not build the Linux version of Silverlight directly. But no plans at this time.
Can you implement Silverlight 2.0 in existing ASP.NET applications?
Absolutely. So in fact, I think, oh no, the demos that I didn't show, the demos I showed actually used regular HTML, but there's actually a Silverlight ASP.NET tag that you can insert, and you can basically code against the Silverlight elements exactly the same way. So there's basically full integration. Questions? Don't be shy.
The new DRM supports both pre-delivery and post-delivery, or post-delivery only.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
DRM license issue, does that support also pre-delivery model license? So
the what?
Sorry.
How do you pre-delivery?
Yes.
Okay, sorry. We're actually looking at the possibility of doing pre-delivery of licenses in Silverlight, but there are no concrete plans at this time. So we're not committing to that for Silverlight 2, but we've heard the feedback and we get that it's important, but it's currently not planned.
Okay, another follow-up question is that, so what if it's post-delivery, but what if the license has a multiple playback? Does that light also available?
So that's kind of the same issue.
Okay.
So the question was, if you have multiple video files, can they kind of share the same license?
No. That's one scenario, but one license or one media file and multiple playback, that was supported with the original Windows Media DRM.
I see. So if you play the same file multiple times.
That's right.
Right. So the lifetime of the license is through a media element. So if you keep the same media element, you can play the file multiple times without having to get a new license. But
so with being offline, even.
Offline. So if you go offline, then if you close that media element, you basically lose the license.
Okay.
Right now. So we're looking at ways to make that better, but that's kind of what we have today, and we're not committing to necessarily changing that by the Silverlight 2 timeframe.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Hi. Is the user aware of the DRM installation on the client side?
So the current plan is that it'll be transparent, but there's going to be an option for the user to disable it if they don't want it. So, but by default, the user is not even going to know. Unless the app so as an app developer, you can choose to let your user know, but you don't have to. So
in this case, don't you think that will come to privacy issues?
So we're looking at that. There are no privacy concerns necessarily because the user gets concerned on gives consent on the EULA. So, but I'm not a lawyer. I don't know all the details, but we're making sure that we're not kind of breaking privacy of end users.
A question about MMS. Can I use MMS in streaming? Are there any differences with first version of Silverlight?
Can you use MMS for streaming?
Yeah, I mean media element source equals to
Absolutely.
MMS.
So
yeah?
what the demo I showed where I got the video feeds from msn.videos.com or videos.msn.com, that was all streaming from a Windows Media Server. So it's
okay,
an MMS
so,
URL.
And I can use MMS from any server?
As long as it's a Windows Media Server, yes. Now keep in mind, MMS is just the URL moniker, but we're actually using HTTP streaming under the covers.
Okay.
Hi. Right now we use WMRM, but we use it in a very specialized way. We've had to build a proxy in front of WMRM to do our authentication and our authorization. And there have been some talks, some references to making the WMRM and the link between client and server a little more modular and allowing customers to actually encapsulate those packages, the license requests, if you will, within their own protocol. Are there any solid plans to allow us to do that kind of model?
So there are no current plans. So I'm not in the DRM team per se, so I don't know all the details. We can talk offline if you'd like and to get more information. But I don't know of any concrete plans to make that feature request, to make the interactions a little more modular and easier to use. All I know is there's the SDK on the server side, and you can basically do whatever you want, but I don't know of any plans of making that improvement. But if you want to talk after this, I would love to hear your feedback and make sure that we hear it and capture it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the searching that you've got now using HTTP 1.1, what arguments would there be for using MMS in a streaming server for video on demand instead of just using HTTP, and especially HTTPS?
So there's a number of benefits for streaming. So you get some scalability on the server. So with the byte range requests that I talked about, it's actually not supported everywhere. So there's some browsers that don't actually give you support for that. And you could be talking to a web server that doesn't necessarily support it. So when you're using MMS, you kind of get it for free. There's also a set of features, so like MBR. So if you have a multiple bitrate file on the server, Silverlight will kind of pick the best stream up front. So there's that benefit as well. But basically, any benefit for using the streaming server still apply. And I don't know off the top of my head all of the benefits, but certainly being able to seek to any point in the video without having to wait for the rest to download is still one of the big benefits. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to be here for a little bit longer and be on the open space. So if you want to stop by and chat, I'd love to talk to you. So thank you.